Okay, everyone, I think we'll get started. Welcome to our main, this is our main meeting. There's always something glitchy, so tonight our sound system doesn't seem to be working in the room. So if you can't hear, hold up your hands. Hopefully we have good teacher voices like me. But anyway, and the people on Zoom, I think that they can hopefully hear through the mic. So
Yes.
Anyway, with that, we'll move on. So first of all, we'd like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the traditional territories of the Nanaimo and Nanaimo First Nation. And and I would I'd like to just remind or ask the people on Zoom if they could just enter in the chat, maybe just tell us where you're from, because we reach out to other groups across Vancouver Island, and we'd like to know how effective we are at reaching people and signing on, or if you're a NALT member. And this is like we're coordinating now with NALT for these presentations. So our mission is to foster an interest, appreciation, and enjoyment of nature and promote the conservation of healthy natural ecosystems in the Nanaimo region. And we have a big presence online. We try to have a big presence online. Our webpage, naturenanaimo.ca. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Hit the subscribe button and like, and email naturenanaimo@gmail.com. And we're in the process of switching that over to info@naturenanaimo.ca. So I should change the slide as we transition, but that still works. So some upcoming events. Well, the first upcoming event is just hours away, right, Stefan? It must be, it's so exciting. We're going to be out in Harwood Plains Wildflower Meadows tomorrow morning. It's a very beautiful spot. If you're not familiar with Harwood Plains, it's probably the most spectacular sort of big area of wildflowers in our region. And Stefan's going to lead that walk. We're going to meet at 9 a.m. I sent out an email. It had a map from Stefan where to meet on McKeown Road, which is just off Extension Road down in South Nanaimo. And the walk it's kind of moderate, a little bit of up and down, a little bit of rough, but it's generally a pretty good walk. Then there's a few things I kind of got caught up in dog vet things today, so I didn't send out emails about these things, but I will on the 21st of May, just FYI, down at Goldstream Provincial Park. There's a walk with an elder there, and they're trying to protect some forest down at Goldstream Provincial Park. And so there's an organization that's involved, but there is an outing down there if you're interested on the 21st. On the 22nd, we're going to try and do some broom busting in butter tubs. And so if any of you wants to bring along your loppers or your secateurs, and I'll send out an email about that, and we'll meet about 9:30 at the Jingle Pot parking lot and try and cut some broom. Then on the 23rd, I also just, again, I haven't sent out the email, but Mosaic, the people that own a lot of the land around here, they're asking for input from the public about our views on recreational use of Mosaic lands. So it's a good opportunity for us to complete the survey. It says on the website, takes about 8 minutes, and input saying, please, like, for example, in Harwood Plains, we're getting a lot of ATV traffic down there that's chewing up these precious wildflowers. And so I think we want to make it clear to Mosaic that we should be protecting sensitive natural ecosystems. But anyways, that survey can be done at any time now, but the 23rd is the closing day of that survey. Then on the 24th, it happens to be World Turtle Day. Who knew that they get a day? And they should have a day. And so there's going to be an event at Butter Tubs. We also have our public outings at Butter Tubs on the 24th. So you can go on the outing and invite members of the public. Be wonderful to do a little tour around Butter Tubs. And then that starts at 9:30 and you'll be back just in time. Our leader for that, Daisy, I think is going to be running the World Turtle Day thing. So you'll do the loop and then you can learn all about the turtles that are there, the Western painted turtle, of course, an endangered or a species at risk. The population here is in jeopardy. So you might see some turtles out there. But anyway, so that's World Turtle Day, a week from Saturday. And then on the Sunday, we're just having 2 broom busting events at Buttertubs. We thought we'd do a weekday and a weekend, just to you can attend both, but just to try and increase the opportunity of getting people out there to tackle the broom and other invasives at Buttertubs, but mostly broom. Then on the 26th of May, the very next day, this is long planned and we can't change the tides. There's a really good low tide, midday low tide. So we're going to do an outing in Landsville, and Rick Harbo, our esteemed marine biology expert, was going to lead that walk, but he's injured himself. We're still going to do the walk. He's told us, where we should go and what we might see, but I'll be sending out more details about that. But on Monday, the 26th of May in Landsville, it's going to be a nice low tide walk. There's lots of sand dollars there, for example, like hundreds and hundreds of them in the eelgrass beds there, and some other cool stuff. And then coming up on the 21st of June, and we'll have more details about this a little bit later, but that's our picnic is coming up, our summer picnic. So that's the hike to protect Goldstream Park on the 21st of May. And then the Mosaic Forest, you could just, I'll send you the link, but they have that survey up there, and World Turtle Day coming up. And that's a Western painted turtle right there. You see by the reddish plastron. And so there's a bunch of events at Buttertubs Marsh associated with that World Turtle Day. And you can see this, I'll post this on YouTube if you want to see the details, but there's lots of things going on there. And it's sponsored by NALT, and NALT's really involved in monitoring Western painted turtles here, and they've given talks here, Linda, about that program, and some of our Nature Nanaimo members are volunteers in the Western painted turtle egg-laying monitoring and that sort of thing. So I'll call on Chris or Sally to come up just to speak to the picnic. Sally? And I have slides of the details there, Sally, if you want. So there's the first bit of information, when and where. And you can just come up and so the people on Zoom can see you. Oh, sorry.
On that side.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so June 21st, start of summer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think. So you're all welcome to a summer picnic. We're going to have it at the Bowen Lower Picnic Park again this year. It seemed to work out quite well last year in terms of accessibility and location. And it will run from 12 noon to 3 p.m. We extended it by 1 hour this year because last time it was a bit short because we were late booking, actually, is the reason. But Chris will lead a ramble and walk at 11:15, so before the lunch. So I will be sending out an email to all the members about this, and you'll get the details then. So just a potluck again, and coffee, tea will be provided. We have power this time in case it rains and is a cold day. And what else do we need to know?
You can look up the slide. Got all
Look at the slide, yes. So all the details are up there, and you'll get a copy of this anyway. $5 per person to cover the cost of renting the area, and bring your own plates, cups, cutlery to be environmentally proper. And also we had a silent auction last year, and it seemed to work really well. We raised lots of money for the award Nature Nanaimo Award at that time. So we're going to try that again this year. So start thinking about what you might want to You don't have to, but if there's something you want to get rid of, and when you've got too many plants of one kind or another, or a book that you don't have room for on your shelf anymore, maybe you can donate that to the silent auction.
Awesome.
Anybody got any questions?
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Oh, we have a raffle for,
yeah.
sorry, Gary donated a $25 Tim Hortons card, and that's what we're raffling today. It doesn't look very impressive, but it is worth $25. If anybody is a Tim Hortons fan, and we haven't had many takers on the raffle tickets yet, so you maybe there'll be time to do that towards the end.
Okay. Our Discovering Butter Tubs walks, I mentioned this briefly, and this year we didn't get, well, for various reasons, we didn't get in the Parks and Rec activities guide. So we're well, not struggling, but we want to make sure we publicize these walks well. And we have some posters up and around, but please share that information, encourage people. Once a week during, most weeks during the summer, we have a public walk led by a Nature Nanaimo member. And so the next one, I guess, is the 24th. And you may have seen this. I think I've sent this out to everybody, but we are still looking for people to help lead the walks. And all you have to do is be enthusiastic. You don't have to be an expert. You can just download the Seek app on your phone and just aim it at things, and it'll tell you, like if someone's bringing a dog that they shouldn't be there, it'll tell you it's a dog. But just be enthusiastic, walk around the marsh with the public and just enjoy the observations. Yes.
Are you posting them on Facebook in the event section?
Yeah, it's on Facebook. Is it in the?
Like
I don't know.
every week, I mean?
Sorry?
Are you posting them every week?
No, I probably should be, eh? Like,
It would be a great way
yeah,
to
yeah.
get people, because that's how I found out about this group tonight.
Oh, is
I
it?
didn't know you
Okay.
existed.
Oh,
I was on
really, eh?
Facebook, and this came up.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
So,
good.
But it
Yeah.
would be lovely to
Yeah.
know this every week. because
Yeah.
People are looking for.
Yeah.
that.
Well, see, it's again, it's partly just, users don't know what they're doing, right? Because when I go on Facebook, when I go to the Nature Nanaimo page, I always see the banner. And that's the banner. And then my daughter says, but Dad, when people are on Facebook and they get the post, they don't see the banner. And I go, what do you mean you don't see the banner? It's like, no, it's like, and so, even though it's on our page, it's not coming up as a posting, right?
Yeah.
So it needs to come up as a posting
Yeah.
or as an event. And I know Alan's good at making events when I ask him to, but thanks, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. But anyways, get the word out. And if you want to, just join us. And it's really great if we have a couple of people at least going out on these walks with the public. So it's not just relying on one person, because if something happens and they can't make it or something, and then members of the public show up and there's no one there. And it's just walking around the loop, and there's active bush tit nests there. Chris, how many did you see on your walk? Three? And they're just amazing. And then pied-billed grebe on its nest, and a few, turtles. If it's a sunny day, they'll be out basking on the logs. And so it's just a wonderful opportunity to share your enthusiasm for nature. So I'm going to turn it over now to our president, Gary, and he's just going to speak on a few items.
Hi, thank you. You're a tough act to follow. That enthusiasm is pretty impressive. Hello, welcome. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I guess one of the first things I want to mention is that the Discover Butter Tubs Marsh, there's a magazine, I think, that was passed out. There are some copies in the Nanaimo magazine, and on page 28 or 30? 33.
I have extra copies. I'll leave them at the desk.
Thank you. That would be great. So we started working with Mark and his committee started working with Nanaimo magazine, putting out a monthly article and promoting some of the events going on, trying to bring some attention to situations. The one article that is in this right now is a really great article that was written by Staffen. And it's on the Harewood Plains. And where are you going tomorrow? Harewood Plains? Okay, so the article is on that, and next month, coming out on June 1st and 2nd, we will have an article that's already been proofed, and it was written by Doug, and it's on the Buttertubs Marsh. And it's a really good article. There's also a mention in that we are looking for some tour guides. And it's also an attempt to, as you mentioned, on using Facebook, we're actually trying to reach out to the public and the members of our community to make them aware of nature in Nanaimo, what we're doing, and make them aware of nature in our region. And so far, it seems to be a great success. We do have some work to do on communicating, maybe a little more effectively. Certainly, we have a page on the web for Nature Nanaimo. And by the way, next one like this? Yeah, I think so. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll go past that. And on that page right now, we have a link to something called the Nature Nanaimo Student Award 2025. I spoke at this 2 meetings ago and mentioned that it would be coming up fairly soon. And so what that is an award that we've made available with donations from a number of groups, some funds that have been raised at the picnic, and it's a $500 award. I wanted to call it a bursary, but I'm told that's not the correct term. It is just an award for a grade 11 or 12 student. And the way they can win that $500 award is to just go into this website, naturenanaimo.ca, click the link, and it'll take them to the student award page. And all they have to do is basically at that point fill it in. Now, there is a little bit of work involved. We're actually asking the students, 11 or 12 students, to tell us about a project they are thinking of working on or would like to work on or plan on working on that would encourage the conservation of nature. It doesn't have to be long. As a matter of fact, I think there's a maximum of 300 words. And there's really not that much to it but it is looking to engage a generation of 11 and 12 students in coming to understand our community and having their active participation in what we're doing as a group and getting them involved. Yes.
Oh, as it turns out, I am a grade 12 student, and I'm wondering if it's too late to apply.
No, I thank you for raising that point. We have, I believe, an August 15th closure date. And, you know, if I kept it to myself, you might be the only person that applies so far, but but I'm sorry, I'm going to ruin your night too. But it's been put out to the local high schools. We've talked to the school board and I guess it's the awards bursary or president or awards committee at the school board, and they sent it out to different counselors. And however, you don't really need to get any more information from them. Everything you need is right here. But the other thing I do want to say is that I would encourage yourself and anyone else in this room that would know students or friends or neighbors or relatives that have students that might be in grade 11 or 12 that might be interested to take a look. And we would love to see it. And if we get some participation in it, it's something we'd like to make it an annual event. And toward that goal, we've actually started raising funds for next year's award as well. And any other questions on it? Okay. Now, a little bit of sad news. We heard recently that John Neville, who was the past president of Nature BC, passed away. John was a resident of Salt Spring Island. Interestingly enough, about I guess two issues of this magazine ago, we wrote an article called "How We Found the Start of Nature in Nanaimo" and how it got going. And one of the factors in the start of this organization, this group, was John was doing a presentation And it might have been here, and I think it, from what I've heard, I've heard a couple different versions, but I think he was doing a story on birding or owls, owl cries. And the way the story goes, that I understand it, is that at some point during the meeting, he talked with a few individuals in this room and suggested, well, why don't you guys get a nature group going in British Columbia? And that group included Stefan and included yourself, Doug, and it also included Michael Steddings. And from that meeting, the beginning of Nature in Nanaimo has come, and it's been going strong, I guess, for about 8 or 9 years now. And so for those of you who might have known John, we've just basically brought a card to the back of the room, and if you wanted to pass on your condolences or sign your name to the card, please see Sally or Chris at the back of the room, and put your name on it if you would like to. And that brings us to our feature presenter tonight. Mike Dedels is with us, and Michael and Stefan, I believe, have been talking about doing this presentation. I did a little read up on Mike's work and the work with the Grasslands Council. Is that what it's called, Michael?
Grasslands Conservation Council.
Grasslands Conservation Council. And one of the questions I asked was, is there a lot of grasslands on Vancouver Island? And can you answer that right now?
It's in the. No, there's not a lot.
But it's very relevant, not only to Nanaimo, but to all of our province. And I think it's very relevant to, I think, how, well, actually, I'm going to let you tell the story. And if you could all welcome Mike, please come and join us.
Well, I welcome people to move up because you'll see the pictures better and you'll hear me better. So if you want to move closer, please do.
And we'll
And
get
we're
this
just
going.
queuing up.
Yeah.
So while we were, I'm also a member of Kamloops Naturalist Club, and I'm going to be going to Merritt next weekend. Anybody else going to Merritt for Nature BC? Good, we'll see you there. No, I'm looking forward to being in Merritt. The other thing is,
sorry, can I just, can everyone see that on Zoom okay? Shared?
They can.
Can they, oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, okay, so.
the other thing is, I don't have Broome really on here, and it was interesting because we were in Hornby for 4 days, and so driving up there, of course, you see Broome all over the place. And then on the way back today, I noticed that really I hadn't seen any yellow broom flowers on Hornby, and then Denman is covered. So I'm not sure if they've just done a great job there, or it hasn't gotten there so much, but it was interesting to see. Nice to see. Well, they're pretty flowers, but anyway, Grasslands of BC. No, there aren't a lot here. Why am I here? A couple reasons. One is to tell people about the special grasslands of BC and why they're important. Two is to learn a little bit and connect with folks on the island, because there's lots of local groups doing things. I went to Hornby and stopped at Hellywell, met with 5 folks with the Natural History Society there, and they've done work on Hornby at Hellywell. And so it was really great to get together with folks, and my wife likes going to the island. So it's a bit of a working holiday for me. This is my retirement gig, and I have to convince her I'm still retired. And so that's part of it. So a little bit about me, it's on there. I was a UBC grad, and I started out working for Buckerfields for a little while on the road when I graduated. And then I was mostly with the range program, and folks in the island wouldn't think about it so much because in BC, in the interior, there's cattle over most of the Crown lands. And so I worked with the administration with that, and I got to do that for most of my 28-year career with government. Then I worked in invasive plants, and I was also a director of Grasslands Council, and they needed a new director, and I said, I guess I can do that. It's gotten to be a very busy job. And that was my range crew back in about 92 that I started with, and I'm still connected with a few of those folks. And I got to get around BC in all sorts of ways, quad, helicopter, hiking, by truck, of course,
Soaring,
and
yeah.
then even riding around. So it was a pretty good gig. So it was interesting coming down south today, and I can't remember which road it was on. I actually did see a cattle guard. So I was sort of surprised to see it. I'm not sure that there's that many cattle on the range here, but so I was sort of surprised to see a cattle guard coming up out. Oh, it was right when I was coming up out of Buckley Bay Ferry. When you turn on the highway, there's a big cattle guard.
Oh. Yeah. Now the computer that you're on this. Think it'll work now?
So I've been at this for a little while. This was 1982. I was with a group of Aggies from UBC. We went to Victoria and we buried a coffin symbolizing the ALR back in the days when the ALR was under threat, the Spetafor lands, various other things. And so I put this in there just to say that, you know, environmental concerns have been around for a while, and the biggest threat to grasslands, as well as many natural areas, is development still, and the biggest threat to biodiversity. So anyway, that was a while back. I'm the fuzzy-headed guy there. And
Which one?
anyway, grasslands in BC, a lot of people don't think of grasslands at all when they think of BC. It's because it's less than 1% of BC. And when it comes to the status of them, in the coast, in the island's a little different. You got a lot more private land and forest. In the interior, almost like not over 90% of the forest is on crown land. But it's a little different with the grasslands. A lot more of them are private, and some in crown, and then a fair bit more getting represented in parks. But that private number now includes a fair bit of grassland that's held by conservation groups like Nature Conservancy, plus quite a few and a growing number of ranches that are owned by First Nations. There's one at Kamloops, Harper Ranch. There's one up in the Canoe Creek Band, has one on the Fraser, and there's just GBRD held land around Cache Creek for putting up a dump, and they just sold it to the band there. So that's a big chunk of grassland that I spent a lot of my early career working on. And this just shows you a little bit of the complexity of ownership. I don't expect you to look close at it, but there's Kamloops on the right side in the blue. That's Indian Reserve, and there's a lot of grassland on that. The green on the left is Lac du Bois protected area, so that's a large park with grasslands. The pink lands are private lands, so less regulation on them, but we do our best to connect with private landowners, because if we don't talk to them, we're missing a big portion of the grasslands. And then the unhatched areas is vacant crown, and Kamloops is actually lucky that we've got a couple areas like this that are large grassland areas right within the city that are city parks with grassland in them. And there's one of our grassland areas. I took this late October last year. Beautiful day out at Lac du Bois protected area, which is a unique area in BC. You can go from just above Kamloops in the lower grasslands with sagebrush and cactus, etc., and move up through the middle grasslands and upper grasslands, all within about a 13-kilometer drive. So we end up spending a lot of time working there, and it's been in a protected area since what, 96. So the why are they important part? Traditional use. Glaciers covered most of the province till about 10,000 years ago or so. When they left, the little colonizer lichens and small grasses and et cetera moved in, and then the animals and birds and such would follow them in, and then of course people would follow. So they developed a pattern of use with the grasslands for a long time. And when at first, before the trees moved in, there was a lot of grasslands in BC. And of course they've grown and shrunk depending on weather cycles over the years. They say now that we may have more grasslands with climate change. We'll see what happens. Species at risk part, less than 1% of BC is grasslands. Over 30% of the species at risk in BC use the grasslands sometime or other. This is a number you'll hear quite a bit. So that shows one reason they're just really important. They contribute a lot to biodiversity. Some animals particularly like those open areas. They like the hot parts of the Okanagan, things like rattlesnakes and such. And so they're special for those species at risk. And even more so potentially with climate change as things shift. If we do become hotter and drier or have more grasslands, that those species stay healthy. Forage and food security is still are important for grass. Lots of ranches in the interior, and the reason that ranches can be more competitive in the interior, in the summer, the cattle go up mostly up into the timber. You're not going to see cattle around camels. But in April, May, and October, November, you'll see them down there eating grass. So that's much cheaper than producing hay. So that makes the ranching industry more competitive. And it is one of the few places, we know, especially if you eat grass-fed beef, where you can actually eat something that is on natural, maybe altered somewhat lands, but everything else on your plate is pretty well grown off of land that's being torn up. The water cycle, a good healthy grassland captures, stores, and safely releases water, so it helps the water cycle. Pavement doesn't do that. The water just hits it and runs off. And then carbon storage, people don't think of it. People talk about trees all the time. If you Google trees versus grasslands, carbon storage, the first 5 articles that will come up will all tell you that grasses do pretty well in comparison. They roots grow and die every year, and so that carbon gets added to the soil. And when they burn, you're just burning top growth. You're not burning all that carbon into the atmosphere. So it's an important one. So as far as our organization goes, we started in 1999, been around a little over 25 years. We're a bit of a mix. We've got some ranchers on the board. We've got some ecologists on the board. We've got some past range folks. We've got some just general public. And so we've got a good blend of folks. And we do have some younger people on our board, which is great too. And it was driven largely because of concerns about development and grazing management and other things that impact the grasslands. So the biggest threats, yep, anytime.
I'm curious about the motorcycle.
Yeah.
What is the part of the motorcycle?
Well, the recreation is one of the big impacts on grasslands. I'll just be mentioning that here, but impacts on the grasslands, uncontrolled recreation, just like we were talking about earlier here, is a big problem. And motorcycle use was a bigger one, more quads now and then other ATVs. And even one of the bigger concerns now, there's been a burgeoning mountain bike use on grasslands, but with all these electrified bikes, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between them and motorcycles. They tear around. And so when you disturb lands in the interior, they take a long time healing up. It's dry. It takes a long time. So yeah.
Are they making trails especially for them and asking them to stay on the trails?
In a lot of cases, yeah. Yeah. And so, and legislation is weak to try to stop it especially on Crown land. In parks, it's a little firmer, but even there we struggle. There's not enough enforcement. In Lactawa Park, I was showing that they've basically got one ranger out there part-time, and she covers a bunch of parks.
Like when you're talking about the usage and the species at risk, and one of the reasons I think I was more curious about it here on the island, because
Yeah.
We've been seeing for a few years as the caribou moving into the elk, sorry. The elk moving into farmlands, coming down into a lot of the urban areas. And I'm not even sure how they fit in the grasslands, but it certainly seems there's a need for it. And are they on the endangered list in any way?
No, elk aren't endangered. And there's a couple like bighorn sheep, California bighorn sheep that aren't. Mountain goats are. But elk, we just had our annual general meeting in Kimberley.
Yeah.
And so we were in these Kootenays and there's piles of elk there.
Okay.
Large herds move through the Kootenays and of course up through, Jasper's not BC, but that country. And there is more elk moving into the Okanagan and Thompson area.
Yeah.
And there is some push from First Nations to reintroduce more elk. One of the questions is, we had all that grass there. What was eating it? Nature abhors a vacuum. You'd think there'd be something, was there just huge herds of elk? There wasn't bison known here. So there likely was larger herds of elk that were grazing. Deer don't graze grass. They generally browse. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So the big threats to grasslands, conversion to other uses, whether it's agricultural like the vineyards there or houses is a big one. And we're working on that one all the time. Degradation through improper use, whether it be recreation or overgrazing, impacts grasslands. A lot of grasslands have gotten healthier. When they were first grazed 150 years ago, the methods weren't too refined. Invasive species is huge. Spotted knapweed is the big one in the interior, but there's about 30 different species, and it seems like we're always getting new ones added to the list. Climate change will maybe increase grasses as trees struggle a bit more, but on the bottom end, it might make them hotter and more prone to cheatgrass invasion and other weeds. So it's a win and lose situation there. And then just general lack of awareness. When you talk to most people about grasslands in BC, you draw some blank stares. So the great thing is when I talk to groups like this, I can generally say what I want because people don't call me out. I was worried. I saw the name Doug Fraser on the list there, and Doug Fraser was a provincial ecologist with the Range Branch. And I thought, oh, Doug retired here and he's going to come out. And now I better not mess up my speech here.
Different Doug Fraser.
But different Doug Fraser. So just as far as BC, like I said, it's less than 1%, but they're sort of scattered through a number of different areas. Okanagan, Thompson Pavilion, lots in the Caribou Chilcotin, a little bit up in the Bulkley, a little bit up in the Peace. All those wide open farmlands in the Peace are mostly aspen country that's being cleared. That picture there is a south facing slope. So you got a bit of grassland on the south slopes. And then of course, there's the Oak Meadows down the coast here. And there's just, we did a big report on grasses and grasslands and potential losses. So all these red areas around Kamloops are areas at risk of development. And I would say since we did that report about 10 years ago now, that a lot of those red areas have been developed. I know in the Okanagan, it's definitely true. And there's just another map similar to the Okanagan where the red areas are those highlighted. And these areas up around Vernon there, some of those slopes have definitely been developed, and now we're worried about development of the Vernon Commonage. So once they're gone, they're gone. You know, when you talk to the government about development, it's always, well, how can we mitigate it? Well, you tear up all the grass and you move the soil, you don't get it back. It's yeah. So there's I took, well, this isn't a picture I took, but I happened to go through this about 2 months before the big fire that actually jumped the lake from here and went over to the other side. So this is on the west side of the Okanagan, looking over towards Kelowna. I was raised in Kelowna. It was a lot smaller in the early 70s. But these areas up, what you're seeing here, edge of the grasslands up the top, and this area up there, that's not housing development, that's agriculture development. A lot of it's cherries and grapes. And when you hear about the crops that froze out 2 years ago, a lot of them are up there. It was always sort of thought that those areas were too cool for those, but they expanded up the hill anyway. And then you get a cold year and they freeze out. This area here all burned, so it'll look a little different now. They haven't opened it up yet because they're doing some salvage logging. But this is mostly blue bunch wheatgrass, and there's some beautiful bitterroot up there. And Rose Valley is a very nice grassland park. So what is it that we do as a grassland council? We are the only provincial organization representing grasslands. I think we're the only environmental NGO based in Kamloops and that covers the whole province. So we do a lot. We do outreach and education, which is this is part of science and research, policy support, which is basically looking at the big picture stuff, stewardship projects. And a lot of what we do is partnerships. Coming to groups like naturalist clubs and stuff helps, gives us that audience. And when it comes to stewardship projects, working with parks or working with various other groups. We're a small organization. I'm a part-time executive director, and we've got a few part-time folks working for us now, but we're not a big, well-staffed organization. We do a lot with the money that we get. Here's some of the outreach stuff we do. That was me at the P&E. When you talk to folks in the P&E about grasslands, they go, grasslands? What I tell them is when you drive to the interior and you come down into Merritt, those big empty areas there aren't just big empty areas. They're not, it's not like, where are the trees? The grasslands are there. They've been there a long time and they support a lot of species. We do lots of the farmers market things. Sonia in the right there was, we developed a grasslands curriculum and we're working on getting that out to more schools. And then we do lots of little stands and yeah. We do a fair number of field tours. This was our AGM last year. We just had our annual general meeting in Kimberley. We had a great field tour there. We were super lucky with the weather. This one, we were looking at encroachment. So you can see up here how many conifers have moved in there, and then also the sage encroachment there. Two big things that causing losses on grasslands. Too many trees, too much sage. Sage is a native species, but when it gets too dense, you've lost some of your grassland values. And lots of field trips. This one was South Okanagan. It was about 40 degrees that day. Some real diehards came out. Nature journaling is something that we've had some keen folks who are decent artists, and we go out there with groups and do that. That one on the right is talking to agrologist. We've had various agrologist tours. I just did one a couple weeks ago in the Okanagan. And then groups like the Friends of Black Mountain. Like I say, partnering with other groups that have a membership that want to learn a bit.
So, sorry,
Yep.
on the previous slide, and you showed the encroachment, what determines at a given spot whether it's grassland or forest land?
The reason we have grasslands is generally based on the things that determine the plant community are soils, temperature, but a big one is aspect. So the south slopes have less trees on them than the north slopes. From a classification point of view, whether we say it's a grassland or a forest, it's generally, there's a line between 10 and 15% forest cover, where you go from having a grassland that has some trees on to having a forest that has grass underneath. Yeah. But the actual causes of grasslands, and a lot of those grasslands are fire maintained ecosystems, and it's really a big topic these days is prescribed and cultural fires, because as First Nations were limited on their use of the fires over the last 150 years, forests grew in. They used to burn them to make them open for hunting, improve berry and root production and everything. We stopped that. We got great at controlling fire, but we produced some really unhealthy forests, which is what we're paying for now. We do a little fair bit on social media. We put out, we'll do a reel and we'll put it up and we'll get maybe 100 people looking at it. We'll hire Ross Reed here to do it and he gets 19,000 people looking at it. So it's worth hiring him. You go to the work of doing them, you may as well get somebody looking at them. So we do a little bit of that kind of work. And then we have a fair number of videos on our YouTube channel. And a number of publications, and you can find them on our website under resources, including an off-road vehicle. So this whole discussion about controlling recreation's been around a while. We work together with BC Off-Road Motorcycle Association, Snowmobile Federation, Four-Wheel Drive Association, and others to put together this guide, best management practices for off-road vehicles. And we also worked with them on legislation. The legislation didn't turn out as good as we'd hoped. So it's difficult to control. So a lot of it is trying to get users educated. And you can do that with groups. The challenge is the individuals. On the bottom right is our magazine. We've been producing them for a lot of years now. And I've got some of this year's version there. You can have if you like. And then big documents, big research projects. When we started out, the big deal was mapping the grasslands, and we've just got funding to update that mapping. So we're thrilled to be able to do that this year. And so doing research documents is a big part of what we do. So a little bit about your area. Within that document that is available online, it's about 100 pages, and it goes into lengthy descriptions of all the grasslands in BC. And here's describing this area here. As we all know, this isn't all grasslands, but there's spots of them within this eco section that are, some of it is Garry Oak woodland and some of it is upland terrestrial grasslands. Very small areas like on Hellywell where I just was the other day. Oops. And there's some of the areas. So it's not big. 1275 area of Garry Oak woodland on that in this area, and about 4,000 of upland terrestrial herbaceous. So it's not a big area, and a lot of those terrestrial herbaceous are like thin soils, like at Harewood Plains, Yeah, this kind of thing. Interesting communities, and I've been glad to, I don't really know anything about them before. The last couple of years, I spent a bit more time there. I was in Victoria in April, and I'll show you a couple of pictures of what I saw there. On the policy side, this is a letter that we wrote to the premier, just saying, you know, with this whole push for housing expansion, don't forget about the grasslands. Once they're gone, they're gone. That area, Upper Aberdeen and Kamloops, continues to get developed. It's a very nice rough fescue grassland, which is nice upper elevation grassland there. And this one here is slated for mine development. There's a mine proposal there. And of course, everybody's pushing for critical minerals. This one's a magnesium mine. And that little slope there is one of few grasslands in the West Kootenays at all. So it's very isolated in a sea of forest and has species that you're only going to find right there. So once it's gone, there's no mitigating that. On the protection side, we just help promote for the BC Parks Foundation a fundraising effort to purchase 500 and some acres just above Kamloops here that has some great upper elevation grasslands. A fair bit of it has been farmed and would take a bit of restoration to get back to natural, but it's really nice to have that done on the edge of the development, as you can see there. They gave it about a month to raise $1 million, and we managed to do it. And so the BC Parks Foundation is a big organization purchasing private lands these days. On the stewardship side, this is at Lac du Bois, and here we saved some blue bunch wheatgrass when they were putting in pipelines, kept it over the summer, and then we planted in some areas that had been treated for weeds and hoped it would grow. The only problem is we planted September 22nd and we didn't have rain for about a month, so the poor little roots didn't do all that well. But it's a challenge doing restoration interior. Coastal systems are a bit more resilient. You got more moisture, and you go to restore a stream egg or whatever, and things grow fast. You try to do it where there's 10, 12 inches of moisture, and it's a little tougher. This was a weed pull, and you can see we've got a fair number of them out there. And those folks up in the corner there, they were planting those plugs up in the slope. Talking a little bit about encroachment there, all these ponderosa pine on that open area, there's nothing there over 50 years old. So 50 years ago, that would have been an open grassland slope. 50 years from now, if we don't do anything about it, it's just going to be a forest. So another grassland area lost. And in the interior, that's more of a concern these days because those are all fuel for fire. I don't know if you might not have seen the report. We do see it in Kamloops, that Kamloops is the most at-risk community in Canada from wildfire. Yeah. And we've got projects going at Laurie Guichon. When you go to Merritt, if you go up the road to Kelowna, you'll see a little road to Lundbaum. And there's a nice little kiosk there with some great grassland information there. And we're currently working on a invasive plant control project there, which does include herbicide treatment because on large areas, there's only so many options. There is biocontrol there, but we're working with the First Nations on trying to improve some grassland areas there. And again, at Lundbaum, we do a fair bit of education there. We're having Nature BC, and we're going to be giving a talk there next week. And this was out with the Society for Range Management last October. This is me up at Tunquil Lake, high elevation grasslands, doing a little bit of transect work, basically measuring the grasses and seeing what the change is over time. And on the right is fireweed. After fires, that was the big fire near Tunquil Lake, the Tremont fire. There were so many fires this year, we don't expect you to remember the names. But the interesting thing is that the flowering grass there is pine grass growing under the timber. It only flowers when it burns or is logged over. So when you go under a forest in the interior, you'll see a low level layer of grass, never flowers, and then they log it or burn it, and it looks like that. And partnerships with First Nations, we're working more all the time. I just had a couple of discussions today with some folks about they're starting a nursery near Merritt, and there was a conference in Vancouver with folks talking about Indigenous-led restoration, And the bottom left one was the crew that now owns the ranch at Canoe Creek, BC Cattle, coming down and looking at grassland management near Kamloops. So it's an important one for us to work with. Like in the area around Kamloops, we've got about 15 overlapping bands at least, so you're talking to a lot of people. But a lot of them we have pretty common goals on a lot of our areas. They're interested in seeing invasive plants controlled. They're interested in working on encroachment and use of cultural fire. So lots in common there. So that's the general stuff. I was just going to take a quick tour around and show a few pretty pictures of grasslands around BC. If you go over Highway 3, sort of south along the border there, this is coming out of Costin and then going over towards the Soyuz Eagle Bluff wildfire. And you can just see the impact of fire there. This was in the fall right after that fire. I threw this one in mostly because it's pretty sumac in the foreground. But you'll see a common theme with fire here. This is looking down at the border station of the Soyuz. The only thing stopping you from going over the border is a really bad three-strand barbed wire fence, but the folks in the Soyuz told me don't go over that fence or they'll be up there in about 2 minutes. And but this is a real hurt and stand lower grassland. It's got way too much sagebrush, and all it's got really underneath is cheatgrass. Long history of use there. When cattle were driven up for the gold rush days, this is the first place they came. And there's also a long history of horse use on those ranges. So very little grass underneath, very little moisture, and it would take a lot to make that piece of ground recover. Only an hour away from there, up the hill, this is high elevation grassland at the top of Mount Cobo. And it's a great spot because you can look over to the Okanagan and then you can look down to Similkameen. And there's a different species of sagebrush that grows at the top of the mountain there. So it's an interesting piece, beautiful spot. And I had never been there till last year.
So does the sage, it chokes out the grass?
Yeah,
It's not, even though it's a natural, and does it burn?
It burns, and when you burn sage, it's gone. It doesn't recover fast. There's a number of shrubs that are fairly fire tolerant that come back after fire. Sage isn't one of them. So I really have to question how much sage there would have been on a lot of this country. We're actually doing a little article about it in our next magazine. Because if there was regular fire, it just wouldn't have persisted in a lot of areas. It's not very fire tolerant. I know I've gone back and looked at areas after 20 years and no sage coming in.
No sage, but
Yeah.
grass.
But grass
comes
comes
back.
back.
Do you know about the Mount Cobo stargazing party?
I have heard of it. I
Yeah,
haven't.
in
yeah.
August it's meetings.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's a week-long event, people camping up there
Okay.
and with huge, all
Yeah.
kinds of telescopes.
It's known as a great spot for dark skies.
Well, there's some infrastructure there for building a observatory,
Okay.
but they ended up, Canada, apparently the money that was gonna go to that ended up being invested somewhere else in the world. I think there's with some other
Okay.
nations, might have been Hawaii, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Or
Hmm.
Chile.
No, it's a beautiful spot. I got a bunch of great wildflower pictures. I got up there for sunrise on a real hot day, and so it was just fantastic walking around there. Near, again, that same area, there's if you want to learn a bit about grasslands, the Desert Center at Soyuz is a volunteer-run organization and in the south end of the Okanagan there is the only area that you find bitterbrush, which antelope brush. And it is common south of the border, but it only extends as far north as a little north of Okanagan Falls. So it's really at the edge of its range in Canada and quite rare. So similar looking to sagebrush, but totally different family. And that was, again, a 40-degree. I was wondering why they do their talks at 11 in the morning. But at least there was a gazebo I could stand under while I was talking. Here's an area near there. There is an observatory at White Lake. Actually, it's they've got a big radio station there. And so right near that, Nature Trust bought a ranch a number of years ago. And this was 2023, about a month after it burned. And I was wondering what the grasses were. I didn't know at the time. I was out there with the folks from Nature Trust. We had a field trip out there about a month ago now with the South Okanagan naturalists. And you can see about roughly the same spot, the recovery that in 2 years on that location. So it's looking pretty good there. The bulbs do really well with fire. Mariposa lilies, other ones, they're underground. And unless you really cook the soil, you're not going to kill them. Wild onions. And this is a group that came down from Kelowna to do a hike near Summerland, and Don Gayton is a very well-known ecologist in the interior, and he led that hike in one of the ecological reserves, Trout Creek near Summerland. Fantastic year for balsam root again this year, the sunflower that you see there. The Okanagan was just full of it. They're pretty well dying out now. You'll find them at high elevations, but last year and this year have been really fantastic. Plants are quite often cyclical. This is a forest that burned north of Fintry on the west side of the Okanagan in 2021. And really good cover underneath now. There is some balsam root there, lots of lupin. But one of the reasons that you can see those trees didn't all die is because they're well spaced. So the fire doesn't burn that hot. So a lot of good survival there. It will burn hot under the trees, and that's the problem. These brown areas are cheatgrass, which is an annual grass, which is a problem when it comes in. And there's a beautiful balsam root near Kellamore Park. I was a teenager just down the road from here and spent lots of time walking through this park back then. Black Mountain Park near Kelowna. That was a talk I led up there last April. It was a little early for that site, but we got to see a few flowers that you don't always see. And again, that one was a cooperative effort with agrologists, the Friends of Black Mountain, and the Okanagan Conservation Partnership. So try to get people together. The Commonage near Vernon, those grasslands there's just a big new development slated for right about where you're looking. So not many grasslands in that area, and we're going to lose a few more of them by the looks of it. Douglas Lake Ranch, everybody's heard of it? Amazingly, this was December 2nd. We got out there. The Canadian Forage and Grassland Association had a meeting in Chilliwack. The guys are in Harrison, and they said, our members from across Canada want to go out and see Douglas Lake Ranch because it's the biggest ranch around. And I said, you've got to go over to Coquihalla to get there. And it was a horrible drive over the Coke. But they made it over, and then they got there, and we had this beautiful day on December 2nd, looking over Douglas Lake. And I'm actually going out there in June to talk to the cow bosses because they own a number of ranches, just about grass identification and management. So I'm looking forward to that day. Connecting with the private landowners was a real goal of mine when I started this role. I had done it in my range career, but when you're in range, you'd meet them on the home ranch, and then you'd go through the private lands, and you wouldn't really say much because that wasn't our business. We were managing the Crown land. Now in my role, I'm not in a regulatory role, but I'm happy to talk to people about plants identification and management. This was some research on in the Chilcotin on carbon storage under the grassland as compared to the adjacent fir forest. We had our annual general meeting out there 2 years ago. And Churn Creek, which is probably the biggest grassland provincial park, is the other side of the Fraser. Well, it's this side of the Fraser, I guess. Beautiful area, fairly quiet. And again, fire is being a dominant feature there. And there's a Friends of Churn Creek group that I was doing a field trip there in June that I'm planning on going with. And they do a fair bit of work with the local First Nation, clearing, piling, and burning excess fir. Again, another group out, we got out with at Big Bar Lake, which is a beautiful lake, provincial park that not that many people seem to go to. It was a great one for paddling around. And we met with folks there because they were concerned about development there. And a few coastal pictures. You guys know this one. So I haven't seen this yet. I'm looking forward to it. Is it gonna look like that? This was what it looked like in August last year. Not as impressive, but so I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning. And of course, great efforts. And we did write a letter in support of saving Harewood Plains to the politicians a couple years ago at various levels. And it's nice to see that they are still around, but we're happy to support local groups when it comes to trying to protect grasslands. But there's a fair bit happening at the coast, and it is inspiring to see all the local groups. This is Gabriel Island. I went last year and see that they've got this sign about camas restoration there. And this is Helliwell. I was just out there a couple days ago. The 5 folks there with the Natural History Society on Hornby. And so part of the drive for that group was restoring habitat for the Taylor's checker spot butterfly, which they've reintroduced from Denman to Hornby. And there was none left on Hornby, but now that I think they found about 30 or 40 this year. And when we were out there, we saw 4 or 5. So it was good to see that they've been successful there. And that was partly by opening up some areas where the trees had encroached onto those grasslands and planting native plants there instead. One thing that I found interesting there, I didn't know that there was any cactus at the coast, but that's prickly pear cactus underneath at Helliwell. So, I don't know, does anybody know of cactus?
Lots of them, they're prickly pear cactuses
Yeah,
on Halliwell Park.
okay. Yeah,
We
and
used to have a place there, we used to go there all the time.
yeah, in Helliwell. Do anybody know of cactus in any place else down here?
Yeah, Salt Spring, quite a lot of.
Salt Spring, eh?
Little match, all kinds, but yeah.
Okay, now I know. Trial Island off Victoria, I was out with the Gary Oak Ecosystem Restoration Team a couple of falls ago, and they've done this little pile here. I think this Broom Mountain, they've done broom control there, but they don't burn it and they don't haul it away. So they've just made this big mountain of it. But they've gotten rid of a lot of broom and a lot of English ivy. And there's a few species on Trial Island that are very unique to that area. Some owl clover, some very small plants, but definitely unique ecosystems there. And some of the stuff in Victoria, Chatterton Hill Park coming down from the ferry, nice little restoration work done there. There's one lady who's with the invasive species weed program who is very dedicated to clearing that area. Playfair Park, again, a small team of dedicated people is doing a great job on Playfair. And this is some of the work they've done there. They've tarped it. So the orchard grass was the dominant agricultural species planted around here. So they put tarps on in December, January, leave it there for a few weeks or maybe 6 weeks and take it off, and it kills the orchard grass, but it doesn't kill the camas. So they've done great work there with that. And then there's the viola there is a rare and endangered species.
Mike?
Yeah.
Is there any good sort of reference or report on the topic? Because we want to try to Hema Park. It's a chemist meadow there.
Which park?
Hema Park.
Okay.
And there's a chemist meadow there. We want to try targeting, so be interested in the timing and the methods. And
Yeah, if anybody wants to know more about specifically Gary Oak,
is there any sort of research or reports on the method for tarping camas?
looking for research or reports on the methods for tarping camas.
Because we want to do that in Hema Park.
Yeah, good. That's a good question. I was out there on Playfair with folks from the Invasive Species Society and from, that was Oakbait, no, Saanich Parks. And I could get that information from Saanich Parks likely there. Yeah. Also, if people are looking for resources here, the Gary Oak Ecosystem Restoration Team, GORT site, has a lot of information, including maps of all the Gary Oak restoration sites at the coast. It's a great map. So I encourage you to have a look at that.
But the ballpark, you say, tops on in December for 6 to 8 weeks.
That's what they were doing, yeah. And the problem, they managed to kill the orchard grass, which is a perennial, a little bit of struggle with some of the annual weeds and such. It's a lot of pulling to get them, and they're harder to kill with that method. So where do we get the money to do what we're doing? We got a little bit of money from a local Rotary Club. There's our members. We're out in January. Kamloops is sunny in January. And so there's a number of our board members and myself getting a check from the Rotary Club. But here's where we've been struggling for money. I started in 2022 and we had a budget of under 100,000. And this year we've got a big donation from an anonymous donor over 3 years. And then we've initiated a fundraiser a couple of years ago. This year we made over $40,000 with lots of sponsors. We did our gaming money, and then we did get some late season money from the ministry, but we're not highly government funded by any means. We get our money from a lot of sources, which is good. And the projects that we're looking at this year include, we're really busy this year. I've got a young lady working, Heidi is in Kelowna, doing a lot of education outreach, like working with school groups, working with different educational groups. We've got an invasive plant project at Lac du Bois, where we're doing a bunch of mapping and some handwork, and we've got a demonstration area there. We've got areas that haven't been grazed and been fenced that didn't have much monitoring on them, so we're doing that. We're doing a report on grassland native plants, seed collection, propagation, etc., to try to get together a bit of a plan going forward on that. We're doing some encroachment mapping at Lac du Bois using old aerial photos and comparing to new. And we're doing that upgraded grassland mapping. And just in projects we're working on with various other groups around the province. So lots going on this year. It's keeping me busy. This was our fundraiser poster, and we've had some great sponsorship on our fundraiser. And the AGM, like I said, our last one was in Kimberley. We try to rotate around. We usually sort of have it in Kamloops and then go elsewhere. We've been up to Williams Lake a couple of years ago. I'm not sure where we'll go the year after, but planning those is always fun. We do have some swag. We got these nice black shirts. We also have and I didn't bring them in. I forgot to bring it in. Is a bamboo shirt with grassland plants on it. A very nice shirt, very nice light shirt, and our grassland socks, which are over there. And it's really, they're not money makers for us, at least not big money makers. But it's really about the promotion. So if anybody's interested in those, I've got a few in the car, and I can help you out there. We do the magazine every year. We're just in the process of putting together this year's edition, and I do have some of those up front. And happy to have you sign up for our newsletter. If you go to our website, we're not hard to find. And we're busy on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn is a place that you can see a lot of our stuff. It's a great place for connection with conservation groups, consultants, and First Nations. We've got lots of connections on LinkedIn with those groups. And I just throw up the idea, if people have ideas on how the GCC can help conserve your grasslands down the islands, we're happy to work together with folks. And happy to answer any questions. I think that is the end. We just do have a new membership page. So if you go to our site and look at support us, the membership page is there. We just revised our fee schedule. It's $35 for a year, $100 for 4 years, and we do have a lifetime membership there now. Plus we have a student rate, $10 for 3 years on that. So we're happy to have more student members and encourage you to be a part of our organization. We work really closely with Thompson Rivers University. They've got the natural resource science program, including grassland courses. Wendy Gardner is a prof there, taught the grassland courses for a number of years, and she's on our board. And so lots of folks right in Kamloops that are getting fairly well educated in grasslands. Yeah.
Is there any information, like, I'm interested in the encroachment area, because we're suppressing fires that have taken out young trees. We're, doing other things that causes encroachment. And what's really effective is when you have a picture series of a particular spot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, are you aware of anything like that for up here?
We do have with our Lac du Bois for here.
Well, but no, that's BC.
For BC, there was work done in the Caribou where they actually established, using old photos, they established a grassland benchmark where they tried to put lines and say, this is where the grasslands were, and this is what we're going to try to hold them to. And they based that on aerial photography from the 60s. And we've got aerial photography around Kamloops that's going back a bit farther. So that's what we're using to compare to current at Lac du Bois to try to do that same kind of mapping. We'd like to expand that further throughout the province. And we do get a bit of extra money with our grassland mapping project from the BC Conservation Fund that we hope to be able to apply to doing more of that kind of work. But yeah.
A question from Zoom. Somebody wants to know the name of the bird.
Oh, sorry. Curlews.
Species.
Curlews are, yeah, no, the curlew is sort of an iconic grassland bird. Sadly, we're not seeing as many of them around Kamloops these days. They seem to have shifted their range north. And so curlews are more common in the Vanderhoof country now and farming country there.
And Williams Lake.
And Williams Lake. And so, you know, it's interesting. I theorize, and maybe I'm wrong, is that maybe curlews increased over the last 200 years with heavy grazing, which gave open land that they like. And now with better grassland conditions in a lot of areas, they don't have as much open habitat as they'd like in a lot of cases. I might be wrong, but we don't know how many curlews were around a couple hundred years ago. So we don't have baseline really.
It's so neat to hear them, you know?
Yeah.
They're just, you can hear they're all over the place. You don't see them, but you can hear them.
You're still seeing them around Williams Lake?
Yeah.
I know that Birds Canada is doing a report on curlew distribution currently, and we're trying to catch up with that. Yeah.
Small mammals are found in the grasslands. I can only think, but I can't even remember it. Marmots.
Yeah, marmots, and marmots are good food for badgers, which is a small mammal that is a species at risk. And there's only, a handful, I think, there's only a couple hundred in BC, I believe. And they can go into an area and really clean out the rodent population. But they weren't with rodent control. We lost a lot of the badgers, and badgers don't do very well with traffic. So road mortality is a big concern with badgers as well as rattlesnakes. So there's a lot of small rodents. And then there's, of course, the larger ones are things like bighorn sheep. I live just on the edge of Kamloops, and people are quite amazed. We live in a golf community in the north side there on the reserve. And we've got a resident community population of about 80, at least 80 bighorn sheep that are there a good part of the winter and through the spring. Yeah, they're starting to move up the hill now.
So is brome an issue, or is it the soil tooth? I mean, it's such an issue here, but.
The annual bromes, there's a couple of them, but cheatgrass is a big problem throughout the whole American West and Canadian West. Cheatgrass is Bromus tectorum, downy brome, and it's an annual grass with a spear on it that'll stick in your socks. And it's really, when you drive through the Nicola, probably within a week or two, you can just see the red tinge to a lot of the hills, and that's brome that's already dried off. It germinates in the fall, over winters, grabs that early spring moisture, gives it the good competition that way, goes to seed, and then sometimes can even do that again. But so it produces a lot of seed, moves into bare ground, and seems to be just spreading rapidly. It also changes fire regimes. It produces a lot of early fuel that we don't always have on the grasslands. Like usually in June, things are greening up, but the brome will be brown. So that's fuel that we didn't have. But it's it's a huge problem all throughout Washington, California. Downy brome covers millions of.
Do native things like
millions
not eat it, like the sheep and so on?
You can force them early in the year, but it cures off so you're early, and then it has the on that makes it so they don't want to go near it. But it's just not good forage after mid-March. Yeah.
So it seems like with the hotter temperatures, the fires are burning hotter and doing more damage even to the soil. But I get the impression that you're saying it's not true of the grass fires. They're not burning hotter because of hotter temperatures.
The grassland fires, yeah, you don't really want them in August. You're gonna have, it's gonna burn hotter than you'd like. And the other thing I didn't really talk about in this is the cryptogram across the layers of lichens and such that populate between the plants. And they do a good job of protecting the soil. They'll absorb moisture, and they're a big part of the community. People don't really see them, but you'll burn off that layer and it'll take a while recovering. But generally, when you get a fire move through a grassland, if it has a lot of sage, it might burn hotter. And so then you'll get those hot spots where you might get invasion of cheatgrass and such. But if you've got a healthy stand of bunch grass, generally it burns off and you'll see it recovering within a very short time. But if you got weeds, you're not getting rid of weeds with fire. It just makes the situation worse when you've got a stand that has weeds in it. And a lot of our stands have weeds in them. So fires aren't great on a lot of our grasslands that have a weed problem. Yeah.
So the fires are happening in more than just the grasslands. You're getting a lot of I guess the wormwood that's died and that's been tinder.
Yeah.
And some of the out of control fires. Now, what impact is that having on the grasslands? I would think in some ways it might be a bit of a boon to creating more grasslands.
Well, yeah, no, and I've been involved in the fire end quite a bit. When I was with the weed program, I worked with the TNRD, the regional district there. So I ended up in emergency operations, and I spent pretty well all of the summer of 2021 working with ranchers on these fires and the aftermath of the fires. And then I got to run an invasive plant program in the aftermath of the 2017 Elephant Hill wildfire. I did a program out there and got on the ground and talked to a lot of ranchers and got to do weed control on private lands. But the stories about how fast fire would move through those fir thickets are just the worst. It'll roar through them, and then, you know, when you look at the fire severity map, the dark red stuff is severely burned, and basically the soil is cooked and things take a long time recovering. On areas that are burned lightly, like that one I showed at Fintry, you'll see recovery in a month. Things starting to green up. But in the areas where the trees are basically turning that you've lost all the needles, then you're having heavy impacts on the soil. As far as the grassland impact goes, one of our concerns is this zeal to plant as many trees as we can. So government gets the program where to plant all these millions and millions of billions of trees. And they tend to push the edges on those. There's fires that were on the edge. There's planting happening on the edge of the grasslands near Kamloops, where really, as a taxpayer and as a grassland guy, I cringe. Why are we planting these trees here when they're going to struggle to survive? I've seen areas replanted 3 times that just were killed out with drought. It seemed like a large wasted disturbance because quite often they'll go in and site prep those areas first. So it's a lot of dollars to get trees that aren't going to be very productive on those sites anyway. So I'd like to see it leave a little more of the grasslands, but then again, I'm a grassland guy.
How much of a problem do you see the broom encroachment that's come across the mainland being? Because it's all over the island, but it's come across.
We don't have much broom in the interior. There's a little bit that creeps up towards the Boston Bar. But there was some spotted in the Kootenays, and they're really trying to get on top of it. It's not hard to spot because, it does stand out. So it's considered a new invader in the interior. And so the areas where we've got like hundreds of thousands of acres of knapweed, it's a lot of dollars to try to control those. But when you've got a patch the size of this table, you can get on top of it and hopefully eradicate it. And that's the time to do it with a new invader. As soon as you find those patches and new weeds, get on top of them and control them fast. And so that's where broom sits in the interior as well as.
There is an effort to control the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're doing a great job of controlling the front because, as you know, going through the Fraser Valley, it's common all through there. Yeah. And they've got a lot of invasive problems in the Fraser Valley.
The grasslands is knapweed the worst.
Knapweed covers the most area and has probably the largest impact on plant community health. Sulfur cinquefoil is a native. The thing about knapweed is we do have some biocontrols on it. There's about 10 different agents that have been brought over from Europe that control various parts of the plant, and are surviving well and reducing plant vigor and reducing seed production. Sulfur cinquefoil is a different one. It's related to it's in the strawberry, the rose family is same as strawberries. There is no biocontrol on it, so there's nothing really holding it back. And so it's very problematic. I know it's a big problem in the Kootenays and in parts of the Okanagan. And there's a number of other weeds. It's a large number of weeds that, but we're trying to stop them. In the Merritt area, blue weed is a borage that covers lots of area.
Is that same as Patterson's curse?
And not familiar with that one, but it's then there's Anchusa. There's just a lot of different weeds.
I just have a observation. In Goldbridge, they had a fire in the 5 Mile Ridge. And I was hunting in that area there. And if you go up there where the fire was, the trees are between 6 inches and a foot diameter. And the roots are all burned off on them. And when you drive there, like these back roads, and in a real windy day, and you don't have a chainsaw,
Yeah.
the wind is blowing these trees down across the road.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you couldn't return because the road's covered with trees. And I used to get my firewood from there because you didn't even have to cut the tree down, you could just push it down. How does that happen? Like,
Well, when you walk through a fresh fire in the interior, quite often it'll almost look like dinosaur footprints where the whole root just burns right out to the ends of the roots. So you'll see these big things that just look like, the whole root system is
it's so
gone.
hot, in the root is more pitch than in the rest of the tree.
Yeah.
And so it burns the root off and.
Yeah, I don't want to say something I'm not sure on. But they do definitely, when those fires get hot, the big pines, big firs, well, they'll burn right down to the tips of the root. Yeah. And then the big problem they're having up north is carryover fires up in the Fort Nelson country and such, where they've got fires there now that they didn't get out last year or that went underground.
What's in,
Yeah.
Fort Nelson's the same thing, there's
Yeah.
still fires burning there.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for your patience.
Thank you very much. And raffle?
Yeah. Don't go anywhere yet. So, don't forget, please, the card for John, Neville, thank you. If you can sign it at the back table on your way out. And then we have this Tim Hortons card for $25. And hardly any tickets were bought. So Sally's here, if you want to buy tickets, they're $2 each or
$2.80 for tickets.
3 for $5. There we go. So.
You're welcome. If anybody's interested in a magazine, don't forget to grab them. We got some pencils and I do have my socks and shirts. Oh, yeah.
Well, you can have one person for me.
It's actually fun to do these talks for groups that don't hear about it.
Well, I have to do that.
I think good night all for the Zoom folks.
No problem. There's no stupid questions. Okay. See.